Don't let your fiancé take him home again.
The little girl's voice was barely above a whisper, but it stopped one of Korea's most powerful billionaires dead in his tracks. Kim Chae-young looked down. The child was trembling, not from the cold, from fear. He almost told security to handle it. Almost. Then the girl grabbed his hand. Small fingers, surprisingly strong. She rose on her tiptoes and whispered something that made every other sound disappear. Because every time she takes him home, he comes back with new bruises. Chae-young froze. For a second, he thought he had heard her wrong. He hadn't. Around them, the gala carried on. Glasses clinked. People laughed. His publicist lifted 2 fingers from across the ballroom. 2 minutes. 2 minutes until the engagement announcement. 2 minutes until he stood beside Lee Chae-young and promised her forever. Then the little girl tugged his sleeve again. Harder this time. Please. Just one word. But there was desperation in it. The kind no child should ever know. Chae-young lowered himself to her height. "Who is he?" he asked. The girl didn't answer. She pointed, across the ballroom, toward a little boy standing near the grand staircase, alone, quiet, watching everything, watching everyone, as though he was waiting for something bad to happen. Chae-young followed the child's gaze, and the moment he saw the boy, something inside him shifted. The boy turned slightly. A single dimple appeared on his left cheek, the same eyes, the same smile, the same dimple he saw in the mirror every morning. The room disappeared. The little girl tightened her grip on his sleeve. "Please," she whispered, "don't let her take him." Because a terrifying question had entered his mind. Sudden, sharp, impossible to ignore. Why does that little boy look exactly like me? And why does seeing him feel like opening a door that was never supposed to be opened? What Kim Chae-young was about to uncover would destroy an engagement, expose a betrayal buried for years, and reveal a secret that would change 4 lives forever. And it all began with a frightened little girl who refused to stay silent. His name had been on the cover of Forbes Asia for 3 years running. He's 41 years old, the kind of man whose name alone could move markets, whose silence in a meeting room made executives sweat. Kim Chae-young had built an empire from almost nothing. Pharmaceutical logistics, clean energy infrastructure, a media portfolio that spanned 4 countries, and he had done it with the kind of controlled, precise intelligence that left very little room for surprise. He did not get surprised until tonight. The engagement to Lee Chae-young had been practical. Both families understood that. Her father, Chairman Lee Dong-min, controlled the largest shipping conglomerate in Korea, and the merger of their business interests would create something almost too powerful to name. She was beautiful, educated, sophisticated, and deeply connected. On paper, she was everything. Chae-young had accepted that paper version of his future because the real version, the one he actually wanted, had walked out of his life 5 years ago without explanation. And after a certain amount of grief, you stop waiting. You build walls instead. But now, a little girl was pulling on his sleeve, and a small boy across the ballroom had his dimple. He told himself it was a coincidence, that he was projecting, that grief does that to people, makes them see what they want in strangers' faces. He had read about it. He had counseled himself through it years ago, and he knew the shape of that particular delusion. But the dimple was not a delusion. It was anatomically specific, not the kind of thing a person invents. One dimple, left cheek, appearing only when the boy's face shifted a certain way, not a full smile, but something quieter, a flicker of expression that lived just beneath the surface and surfaced when he was unguarded. Chae-young had seen that expression in photographs of himself as a child. He stood very still. Around him, the gala continued its expensive, orchestrated pulse. Champagne, laughter, the sound of successful people performing success. 300 guests who had cleared their schedules for this evening because an invitation from the Kim family carried weight, because the announcement of an engagement between Kim Chae-young and Lee Chae-young was not just personal news. It was financial news, structural news, the kind of development that rearranged alliances. None of it existed. There was only the boy behind the flowers and the girl beside him with her hand on his sleeve, and a question forming in Chae-young's chest that was too large to ignore. Shin Woo-jin, his executive assistant, appeared silently to his right. He always appeared silently. It was one of the things Chae-young paid him for. 2 minutes, sir, Woo-jin murmured. Chae-young looked at the girl. Stay here, he said softly. Don't move. He crossed the room without rushing, which was important. He had spent years mastering the art of looking unhurried while moving with absolute purpose. He reached table 7 and crouched down beside the flower arrangement. The boy stared at him. He was perhaps 6 years old, dark skin, quick eyes, a mouth pressed into a thin line the way children press their mouths when they are trying very hard not to be afraid. He was gripping the tablecloth with both fists. Hey, Chae-young said, simply. No performance in it. The boy said nothing. You don't have to go anywhere you don't want to go, Chae-young said. Not tonight, okay? Something in the boy's face shifted. Not relief. He was too wary for relief. But something. What's your name? Chae-young asked. A long pause. Elon, the boy said. The name landed in Chae-young's chest like something physical. He did not react. He was very good at not reacting. Elon, he repeated. That's a strong name. Behind him, Woo-jin coughed softly. 1 minute. Chae-young stood. He turned and found the little girl waiting exactly where he had left her, watching him with those two serious eyes. What's your name? He asked. Alina, she said. Alina. He studied her face. Where is your mother? Something crossed the girl's expression, a flicker of something complicated and adult. She's working, she said carefully. She doesn't know we're here. Who brought you here tonight? Alina's eyes moved across the room, toward the woman standing near the champagne display in a backless white gown, laughing at something Chairman Lee had said. Lee Chae-young, his fiancée, radiant and perfectly composed, as always. Alina looked back at him and said nothing. She didn't need to. Behind him, the event coordinator was signaling frantically. The MC was approaching the microphone. 300 people were settling into their seats. Chae-young turned to Woo-jin. Tell them we need 20 minutes, he said quietly. Woo-jin's face did not change, which was also something Chae-young paid him for. Of course, sir. And get me security footage from the last 2 hours. Every camera in this building. He pulled out his phone and sent a single message to Han Mi-cha, his personal physician. I need a DNA test. Discreet, tonight if possible. Then he walked back toward the main floor, paused beside Alina, and said quietly, Stay with your brother, I'll come back. She looked up at him with those ancient eyes. You promise? She asked. He had not made a promise in a long time. He was careful about promises. Yes, he said, and he meant it. 5 years ago, Kim Chae-young had been a different person, not weaker. He was never weak, but open in a way that surprised people who expected only the armor. He had met Sonia, at a panel discussion on global health infrastructure at Fiancée University. She was a graduate student from Ghana, presenting research that dismantled 3 of the panel's assumptions in 17 minutes, and did it with such calm precision that the room had gone quiet. He had been the only one on the panel smart enough to be impressed. They had coffee that same evening, then dinner the following week, then something that neither of them had the right words for, but both understood perfectly. One of those rare connections where a person does not simply like who you are, but recognizes something in you that you had almost forgotten was there. Sonia was brilliant. She was stubborn in the specific way that brilliant people are stubborn, not because they refuse to listen, but because they have already considered every angle you are about to suggest, and waited patiently for you to catch up. She challenged him. She laughed easily. She was the first person in years who made him feel like Kim Chae-young the human being, not Kim Chae-young the brand. He had been in love with her before he had language for it. And then, 8 months in, she was gone. No fight, no warning, just a message, cold and precise, and unlike anything she had ever said to him before, that she had reconsidered, that she was leaving Korea, that he should not contact her. He had contacted her anyway, once, twice, 10 times. Then her number was disconnected. He had hired people to find her. They found that she had left the country. They found her university records. They found nothing that explained why. Eventually, he told himself a story about it, that she had decided he was not worth the complication, that she had wanted something simpler than a Korean billionaire with a family who operated like a corporation. The story hurt, but it had clean edges, and clean edges were easier to live with. What he had never once considered was that the story was not true. What had actually happened was this. 3 weeks before Sonia's departure, Han Min-suk had appeared at her apartment. She had not known who he was. He had introduced himself as a representative of the Kim family's personal affairs office, which was technically not untrue and therefore not technically a lie. He had sat down across from her over tea she had made because she was polite, and he had told her, with great gentleness and apparent regret, that Chae-young's family had finalized a marital arrangement, that it had been in place for years, that Chae-young had tried to end it for her sake, but had ultimately understood where his responsibilities lay. He had shown her documents, carefully prepared documents that suggested the engagement to Lee Chae-young was not merely possible, but already arranged and progressing. He had said, also with great gentleness, "He cares for you, but his family needs him to make this choice. And I think, if you love him, you already know what the right thing to do is." Sonia had asked to speak to Chae-young directly. Han Min-suk had said that would cause Chae-young significant pain, and pain he was not certain Chae-young could manage without it affecting his obligations. Then the message had arrived on her phone, in Chae-young's name, saying everything Han Min-suk had prepared her to receive. She had been pregnant for 6 weeks. She had not yet told Chae-young. She had packed 2 bags and gone to the airport and not cried until the plane was over the Yellow Sea, where nobody could see her, and where the weight of everything she was carrying, the child, the grief, the absolute certainty that she had been discarded quietly, finally collapsed into something she could not hold anymore. She had promised herself on that plane that she would not spend her life grieving him, that she would raise her children with everything she had, that she would be enough. She had kept that promise, but she had never stopped wondering, in the very private hours of very late nights, whether things might have been different if she had fought harder, whether she had been too willing to believe the worst, whether love, real love, would have found a way through if she had pushed. She would never know that pushing had been exactly what Han Min-suk had been paid to prevent. The security footage confirmed what Alina had not said aloud. It was 11:47 p.m. when Wu Jin brought the tablet to Chae-young in the private room off the main corridor. Chae-young watched without blinking as the footage from the East Wing corridor showed Lee Chae-young crouching to Elon's level, her hand gripping his wrist. The angle was bad and there was no sound, but the boy's body language was unmistakable. The way he tried to pull back, the stillness that took over him, the complete withdrawal that children do when they have learned that fighting makes things worse. Alina appeared at the edge of the frame, moving toward them, and Chae-young watched as Lee Chae-young straightened smoothly, adjusted her expression, and smiled at someone passing in the corridor. When the person was gone, she looked back at the children. Alina stepped in front of Elon. "Stop," Chae-young said, quietly, to no one. He set the tablet down. "Where are the children now?" he asked. "In the lounge with Mrs. Han," Wu Jin said. "I moved them there 20 minutes ago. They've been given food." "And Lee Chae-young?" "Still in the ballroom. She's been asking for you." Chae-young stood. "Tell her I'm handling a business matter." He walked to the lounge. Mrs. Han, his housekeeper, a small, efficient woman of 60 who had been with his family for decades, was seated near the children. Alina had eaten. Elon had not. He was sitting with his knees drawn up, looking at the floor. Chae-young sat down across from him. "Elon." The boy looked up. "Are you hungry?" A tiny pause. "A little." Chae-young pushed a plate of small sandwiches toward him. The boy looked at the plate, then at Chae-young, as if calculating whether there was a trap in this. "It's just food," Chae-young said. "No strings." Elon reached for a sandwich. Alina, watching all of this with the precise attention of a small general, said, "He doesn't eat when he's scared. He says his stomach closes." "Alina," Elon said quietly, embarrassed. "It's true." Chae-young looked at the boy. "Then we'll wait until you're not scared," he said. "No rush." Elon took a small bite. Chae-young looked at Alina. "Your mother, does she know where you are right now?" Alina shook her head. "We need to call her." Fear moved through both children simultaneously, the same flash of it across different faces. "She'll be worried," Alina said carefully. "Which is exactly why we call her," Chae-young said. He pulled out his phone. "What's her number?" Alina hesitated for a long moment, studying him. Then, slowly, she recited it. Chae-young dialed. 3 rings. 4. Then a voice. And the past walked into the room like it had never left. "Hello?" she said, slightly breathless, as if she had run for the phone. Chae-young could not speak. For 2 full seconds, him, who had given speeches to boards of directors without a single note, he could not produce one word. "Hello?" she said again. "Who is this?" "Sonia," he said. Silence on the other end. A long, terrible silence. "Sonia," he said again. "It's Chae-young." Another silence. And then, in a voice that was very carefully controlled, "Where are my children?" She arrived at the hotel in 22 minutes. Chae-young knew, because he watched the security monitor from the moment she stepped out of the cab. She was wearing a gray coat over what looked like a work uniform. She had come directly from somewhere, and she was moving with that walk he remembered, the one that meant she was holding herself together through willpower alone. He met her in the corridor before she reached the lounge. She stopped when she saw him. 5 years. She was the same. She was completely different. There were shadows under her eyes that hadn't been there before, and something in her face had settled into a steadiness that came from carrying weight alone for a long time. But her eyes, dark and precise and entirely, devastatingly hers, were the same. Where are they? She said. Not hello, not explanation, just the priority. They're safe, he said. They're in the lounge. Alina is fine. Elon, take me to them. He did. Elon saw her first. Something in him unlocked completely. He crossed the room in 3 steps and buried his face against her side, and Sonia's arms went around him with the kind of grip that has been waiting for hours to do exactly this. She pressed her face into his hair and said something very quietly that no one else could hear. Alina sat down. She let out a breath that seemed to have been held since approximately the beginning of the evening. Chae-young watched from the doorway. Something cracked open in his chest, and he did not know what to call it. When Sonia straightened, she looked at Elon carefully, checking him the way mothers check, systematically, with eyes that catalog everything. Then she looked at Alina, who raised her chin slightly. I told him, Alina said, about Chae-young's fiancée. Sonia went very still. She turned slowly to look at Chae-young. We need to talk, he said. Not tonight, she said. Sonia, my children come first. Her voice was quiet and absolute. I am taking them home. Tomorrow, if you have something to say, you can say it through proper channels. Through proper channels, he repeated. Something stirred in his chest. Not anger, but something adjacent to it. You disappeared for 5 years, and now you want proper channels. Her jaw tightened. That is not what happened. Then tell me what happened. Not in front of them. He looked at Mrs. Han. She nodded immediately and guided both children toward the adjoining room with the practiced ease of someone who had managed Kim family crises for 30 years. The door closed. The room was very quiet. Sonia turned to face him and crossed her arms, and he recognized that posture. It meant she was afraid and furious simultaneously and was using one to cover the other. You sent me that message, she said. You told me you had chosen your family's arrangement. You told me to stop contacting you. The words hit him like a wall. I never sent you any message, he said. I have it, she said. I kept it. For 5 years I kept it, because I needed to remember not to. She stopped herself. I kept it. Show me. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she unlocked her phone and turned it toward him. He read it. His name, his contact number, a message dated 5 years ago, 3 weeks after she had left, or, he now understood, 3 weeks after she had been made to leave. The message said exactly what she had described, formal, cold, final. He had never written it. He looked up at her. I didn't send this, he said. Something moved across her face, some complicated geography of hope and refusal and pain. Don't, she said. Sonia, I did not send this. I spent 8 months trying to find you. He stopped. He ran a hand through his hair. Someone sent this. It wasn't me. Why would anyone? Because someone needed us apart, he said. And I think I'm beginning to understand who. He did not sleep. By 3 a.m., he was in his home office with Kim Ki-ja, his legal advisor, and Woo Jin, pulling everything apart. Phone records, server logs. The message that had been sent to Sonia 5 years ago traced back to a number that had been registered briefly and then deactivated. The digital equivalent of a clean alibi. But it was not perfectly clean. Nothing was, if you looked long enough. Ki-ja was methodical. He worked the way a surgeon works. No speed for the sake of speed. No conclusions reached before the evidence suggested them. He had a particular gift for finding what had been deliberately buried, not because he was intuitive, but because he was exhaustive. He believed that every deliberate concealment left a mark, because concealment requires action, and action leaves records. The mark he found was in a telecommunications routing log from 5 years ago. A single relay point that placed the message's origin not with Chae-young's accounts, but with a number briefly registered to a shell entity. A name that meant nothing until you cross-referenced it with 3 other documents, and then it led with quiet inevitability to a telecommunications firm that buried 3 layers down in its ownership structure, connected to Han Min-sok. Woo Jin set a second document in front of Chae-young without comment. It was a record from the same period, 5 years ago, of wire transfers from an account connected to the Lee family to a private security firm that specialized in, as its discrete service menu described it, personal transition management, which, when you strip the language down to its bones, meant pressuring people to go away quietly, efficiently, and without producing paperwork. Ki-ja looked at both documents for a long moment. "This is prosecutable," he said. "Telecommunications fraud, wire fraud. Depending on what Sonia was told directly and what can be documented, potentially criminal coercion." "I know," Chae-young said. "You'll need Sonia's cooperation." "I'll have it." Ki-ja looked at him. He had known Chae-young for 8 years. He chose his words carefully. "This will be public, Chae-young. There is no version of pursuing this that stays private. I know that too." A pause. "The children's identities. Protected," Chae-young said, immediately. "Whatever is filed, whatever is published, the children's names do not appear. Non-negotiable." Ki-ja nodded once. "Understood." Chae-young sat back in his chair. He looked at the DNA test results that had arrived an hour earlier in the private lab report Han Mi-cha had expedited. He had taken a sample from the water glass Elon had used in the lounge, with the boy none the wiser. Han Mi-cha had moved with her characteristic efficiency, no questions asked, complete discretion, results in under 4 hours. He looked at the number, 99.97%. He read it again. He set it down. He had a son. He had had a son for 6 years and had not known. And the woman he loved had spent those 6 years alone, working multiple jobs, raising 2 children in a country that was not originally hers, carrying grief that had been manufactured for her by people who had decided that her existence was inconvenient. He sat with that for a long time. He did not rage. He was not built for rage. He was built for something colder and more durable, the kind of clarity that does not burn out, that simply settles into a person and stays there until the work is done. When the work was done, then he would feel it. Not yet. He called Sonia at 7 in the morning. She answered on the second ring, which told him she had not slept either. "I need to see you today," he said, "not for an argument, not for a confrontation. I need to show you something, and I need you to look at it with me." A pause. "The children will be at school," she said finally. "I can meet you at 10. He sent a car. She didn't use it. She arrived by public transit, which was so entirely her that for a moment, when he saw her walk through the lobby of his building, he felt something so sharp it almost wasn't pain. He had prepared a conference room. Ki-ja was present. Woo Jin was present. He laid everything on the table: the routing records, the financial transfers, the fake message, the security footage from the gala, the firm connected to Han Min-sok, and he organized it in chronological order so that the story built itself rather than landing all at once. Sonia sat across from him and read every document. She read slowly and thoroughly, the way she had always done everything, with complete attention and nothing performed. He watched her face. She gave nothing away while she was reading. She never had. Ki-ja refilled the water glasses and said nothing. Wu Jin stood near the door with the specific stillness of someone who has learned that the most useful thing he can do is not exist. When she finished, she set the last document down. She was quiet for a moment. The kind of quiet that is not the absence of thought, but its opposite. "He told me you had chosen the Lee family alliance," she said. Her voice was very even. "He came to see me personally. He said your family had arranged everything before we met. He said if I stayed, I would destroy your career and your family's future, and that you would resent me for it eventually." She looked up. He was convincing. He was paid to be convincing. And the message confirmed everything he had said. She looked at her hands. "I was pregnant. I was alone, and I believed it." She paused. "I want you to understand that I believed it completely. I did not leave doubtfully. I left because I thought the kindest thing I could do for you was disappear cleanly." The room was quiet. "Sonia," he said, and then, because there were no adequate words, "I'm sorry. I am." He stopped. He ran a hand through his hair. "I should have found you. I should have pushed harder." "You didn't know what you were pushing against." "I should have pushed harder anyway." He looked at her. "I told myself a story about why you left, that you had decided I wasn't worth the complication, that you wanted something easier. I told myself that story because it had clean edges, and I could live with it." She said nothing. "It was a comfortable lie," he said, "and I chose it because the alternative, that something was wrong, that something had been done, meant there was nothing I could have controlled, and I have never been good at accepting things I cannot control." Sonia looked at him for a moment. Then, "Neither have I." A small beat. "You have 2 children," she said quietly. "Alina is 9, Elon is 6. He nodded once. "He asked about you," she said. Her voice did not shake. She had mastered the art of saying devastating things calmly. "Elon. He asks me sometimes why he doesn't have a father. I tell him his father loves him and didn't know where to find him." Something in Chae-young's chest tore in a clean, irreparable line. "That was true," he said. "That was completely true." She pressed her lips together. She was still holding herself carefully, the way people hold themselves when they are afraid that if they stop holding, something important will fall. "What do you want to do?" she asked. "I want to expose what happened," he said. "I want the people who did this to face consequences. I want my son to know who I am. And I want—" He stopped. He looked at her. "I want to have that conversation when you're ready, not before." She studied him. "You need to deal with your fiancée first," she said. "She's not my fiancée," he said. "As of last night." Something moved across Sonia's face. She looked down at the documents again. "She was at the gala," Sonia said. "She was the one who brought my children there. She told them she was taking them to see something special." She paused. "She has been meeting them through the foundation. I didn't know she had a connection to you. I didn't know—" Her voice tightened. "She was watching them. She told me she was a volunteer." The coldness that moved through Chae-young then was unlike anything the boardroom had ever produced. It was the particular coldness of understanding that someone had been strategic about something precious and fragile. "She was watching them," he said carefully. "For months," Sonia said. "I thought she was kind. I trusted her." She paused. "She was always careful around me. But Alina saw something I didn't. She told me afterward that the woman was different with Elon when I wasn't there." Sonia's jaw tightened. "I didn't listen carefully enough." "Alina is 9, he said. She carried this alone. She walked into a ballroom full of strangers and grabbed the sleeve of a man she had never met because there was nobody else." Sonia looked up at him. Her eyes were very bright. She pressed her hand against her mouth briefly, then removed it. "She's been protecting him since he was born," she said. "She told me once that her job is to keep Elon safe." Her voice was quiet. She was 4 when she decided that. Chae-young said nothing for a moment. "She has my stubbornness," Sonia said, and for 1 second, one small fractured second, something like her smile appeared. "She has your bravery," he said. The smile fell. She looked at the documents again. "What happens now?" "Kija is filing for emergency legal disclosure," he said. "The telecommunications fraud alone is enough to open an investigation. The financial records connecting Han Min-sok to the Lee family are going to be uncomfortable for Chairman Lee, and I have a journalist, Yoon Ji-eun, who has been covering corporate manipulation cases for 3 years. She's been looking for exactly this kind of story." "You move fast," she said. "I've had 5 years of standing still," he said. "I'm done with that." Sonia sat for a moment. She aligned the documents on the table, a small, unconscious habit, the need to have the physical world in order when the internal world is not. "I need to tell the children something," she said, "before any of this becomes public. They need to hear from me, not from a news outlet." "Of course," he said. "Whatever you decide to tell them, whatever pace you want to set, that's yours." She looked at him again with that measuring gaze. "You keep saying things like that," she said, "that the pace is mine, that I decide. Because it's true. Men say that," she said carefully, "and then act otherwise." "I know," he said. "I understand why you would expect that. I'm not asking you to trust me on principle. I'm asking you to watch what I do." A long pause. She stood. She collected her bag. At the door, she paused. "Elon hates loud noises," she said. "He needs a few minutes of quiet after school before he can talk. He likes astronomy. He has a library book on planets he has renewed 5 times. She paused. "He cries when he thinks no one is watching. Not from sadness, from overwhelm. He feels things very deeply, and he doesn't know what to do with it yet." She said it the way she said everything, directly, precisely, as a gift, wrapped in information. Chae-young stood. "Thank you," he said. She nodded once and left. He sat back down. He sat there for a long time. The days that followed moved at 2 speeds simultaneously. Legally and publicly, everything moved with the controlled precision of a dismantling operation. Ki-ja filing motions, Woo-jin coordinating information, Yoon Ji-eun working sources, the telecommunications record growing more damaging, with every layer peeled back. Privately, everything moves slowly and carefully, the way you move when something is breakable. Chae-young met Elon on a Saturday morning. Sonia had arranged it. Neutral ground, a park, both children present. He arrived with nothing, no gifts, no gestures, because he understood instinctively that arriving with things was the wrong message. He arrived as himself, which was the only currency that mattered. Alina met him at the gate. She looked at him appraisingly, the way she had at the gala, that ancient, measuring gaze. "You came back," she said. "I told you I would," he said. She considered this. Then she stepped aside to let him in. Elon was on the bench with Sonia, looking at something on the ground. He looked up when Chae-young approached, and went still in that way he had, the withdrawal, the assessment. Chae-young sat down on the other end of the bench, not beside Elon, not pressing. "What are you looking at?" he asked. Elon glanced down. "An ant," he said. "It's carrying something really big." Chae-young looked. The ant was indeed carrying a crumb approximately its own size. "It won't put it down," Elon said, "even though it's heavy." "Maybe it's carrying it home," Chae-young said. Elon looked up at him briefly, then back at the ant. "Yeah," he said, "maybe." Sonia, beside him, exhaled very quietly. They stayed in the park for 2 hours. Alina eventually decided that Chae-young was acceptable and began informing him of various things: the correct way to identify cloud types, why a particular book she was reading was poorly plotted despite being popular, her opinion on the park's inferior coffee kiosk. He listened to all of it with complete attention because she deserved complete attention, because she had earned it about 9 times over. Elon warmed more slowly. He was quiet where Alina was loud, cautious where she was bold. But by the end of the 2nd hour, he had moved from the far end of the bench to somewhere closer. And when Chae-young stood up to leave, Elon looked up at him with that careful face. "Are you coming back?" Elon asked. Chae-young looked at him, at that face with its familiar angles, at the dimple that had started everything. "Yes," he said, "I'm coming back." Elon nodded once, solemnly, as if a contract had been signed. Alina watched all of this and said nothing, which from her was a very loud approval. If you have stayed with this story all the way here, if you've felt it, if you've held your breath through the park scene, through the documents on that conference table, through Alina and her ancient eyes, then this story belongs to you now. Leave a comment below and tell us what moment hit you hardest. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it right now, because what's coming next is the part that will break you open. Because Lee Chae-young had not been sitting still. She had been watching everything. She was not someone who panicked, which was what made her genuinely dangerous. Where another person might have grown erratic, she grew precise. She had her father's instincts for crisis management, the ability to assess a collapsing situation and identify its pressure points quickly. She had done the calculus within hours of Chae-young's retreat from the ballroom. She knew what the security footage would show. She knew that Alina had reached him. She had seen it happen and had been too far across the room to intercept it cleanly without drawing attention to herself, which would have been worse. She knew, from the way Chae-young had moved through the rest of that evening, unhurried, controlled, speaking to Woo Jin with that particular stillness that meant decisions were being made, that something had already shifted. She had spent the night assessing her options. The legal front was problematic. She knew enough about Kim Ki-ja to know that once he had a thread, he would not stop pulling. The telecommunications trail was her weakest point. Han Min-suk had been careful, but careful was not invisible, and Ki-ja did not believe in invisible. The financial transfers were worse. She had warned her father about them at the time. He had said the firm was reputable and discreet. She had said reputable and discreet were not the same as untraceable, and he had told her she was being paranoid. She had let it go because he controlled the money, and she needed the money. She was not paranoid, she was simply correct. The pressure point, she had decided, was Sonia. Not legally, but socially. There was still the court of family opinion. There was still Chae-young's father, Kim Hyun-woo, who had spent 20 years building the Lee alliance and who did not yet know the full story. There was Chae-young's grandmother, Kim Hye-jin, a formidable woman who would need to be handled carefully. Lee Chae-young went to see Kim Hye-jin. She was very good in that meeting. She had always been very good with the grandmother, warm, attentive, respectful of the older woman's traditions in a way that was completely manufactured, but looked entirely real. The performance had taken years to perfect. She deployed it now with the precision of someone spending a resource they know is not renewable. She told Hye-jin a version of events in which she was the injured party. A foreign woman, she suggested carefully, who had never been fully committed to Korea, who had left once and was now returning only because she had discovered who Chae-young was. There were children. Yes, she did not deny the children, because denying them would have been a provable lie, and provable lies were weapons you handed to your opponents. Instead, she suggested uncertainty, circumstances, questions worth asking. Kim Hae-jin listened. She always listened. Then she said, "Where are the children now?" Lee Chae-young had not expected that question. "With their mother, I believe." Said Hae-jin. "And they are Chae-young's?" "That's what she claims." Hae-jin looked at her for a long moment, with eyes that had been reading people since before Lee Chae-young was born. Eyes that had, in 83 years, seen exactly this kind of performance before. Different faces, same architecture. "I would like to meet them," she said. Lee Chae-young left that meeting considerably less certain than she had entered it. There was something in the grandmother's expression she had not been able to read, which was unusual. She was very good at reading rooms. She went home and called Han Min-suk. "We have a problem," she said. "I know," he said. "Fix it." A pause. "My options are limited." "Make new options." She hung up. He made his move 2 days later, and in doing so, made the worst mistake available to him, which was to reach toward Sonia when Sonia had already reached toward Chae-young. He delivered a message through a mutual foundation contact, formal, careful, constructed to feel like concern and function like a threat. He had misjudged his opponent. She made her real move 2 days later. It was Han Min-suk who delivered the message, not to Chae-young, but to Sonia directly. Sonia received it through a mutual contact at the foundation, a formal suggestion that she might consider the reputational consequences of pursuing this matter publicly. A suggestion that implied legal action for custody could become complicated. A suggestion that was not quite a threat, but was arranged to feel like one. Priska, Sonia's closest friend, was in the room when the message arrived. She watched Sonia read it. Then Priska said, calmly and precisely, "Call him." Sonia set the message down. "He needs to know this is happening," Priska said. "Sonia, call him." "I don't want to need him," Sonia said. "That is not what this is about," Priska said. "Your children are involved. Call him." Sonia picked up her phone. Chae-young answered immediately. "I need you to know something is happening," she said. No preamble. "Tell me," he said. She told him. The silence on his end was very brief and very specific. Not the silence of surprise, but of someone who has just confirmed what they already suspected. "Han Min-suk," he said. "Yes." "Where are the children right now?" "At school." "I'm sending security to the school," he said. "Not obviously. Plain clothes, parked outside. Is that acceptable?" She paused. "Yes. And I'm calling Kija right now. The message you received constitutes intimidation. That changes what we can do legally." He paused. "Sonia, they're reaching because they're losing. They would not be doing this if we weren't already close." She pressed her hand against her sternum, where her heartbeat had been slightly too fast for 2 days. "I know," she said. "You know this," he said. "You're the most clear-headed person I have ever met. They're counting on you to be afraid. Don't give them that." A pause. "Don't compliment me right now," she said. "I can't deal with that right now." The very faintest thing that was not quite a laugh entered his voice. "Understood," he said. "I'll call you in an hour." He called in 45 minutes. It came apart in the way that elaborate structures come apart when the wrong piece shifts, all at once, and faster than anyone anticipated. Kija filed the telecommunications fraud case on Thursday. By Friday morning, Yoon Ji-eun's piece had gone up on her outlet's site. Not speculative, documented, sourced, built on 3 months of work that the unfolding situation had accelerated but not created. The routing records, the financial transfers, the security firm, the manufactured message, the timeline. It was meticulous. It was devastating. Chairman Lee Dong-min released a statement denying involvement. The statement contained one claim that was directly contradicted by a document in Yoon Ji-yoon's piece, which she noted in a follow-up post approximately 90 minutes later. Han Min-sok retained counsel and said nothing publicly. What he said privately, to Ki-ja's team, in a room with a recording device and significantly reduced legal exposure on offer, was considerably more detailed. He had been approached by Chairman Lee's office. The scheme had been framed as protecting a critical business alliance. He had not anticipated, he said, that there would be children involved. He had told himself the separation was temporary, that Chae-young would move on. He had been wrong about that. Lee Chae-young released nothing. She went quiet, which was the most honest thing she had done throughout. Kim Hyun-woo called his son on Friday afternoon. "You should have told me," Hyun-woo said. His voice was tight. "I am telling you," Chae-young said. "Now, when I know enough to tell you accurately." A pause. "The children are mine." "Yes." Another pause. "Longer? When can I meet them?" That Chae-young had not expected. "I'll arrange it," he said. Kim Hae-jin called 30 minutes later. She did not ask questions. She said, "Bring them for dinner Sunday, both of them, and their mother." A pause. "I already know what she looks like." "Chae-young, I want you to understand that I have never, not once in 40 years, been fooled by Lee Chae-young. But I am an old woman, and sometimes I wait for the world to show me what I already suspect." He sat with that for a moment. "Yes, Halmoni," he said. "Sunday," she repeated, and hung up. He met Sonia at the park again, the evening after the story broke. The children were with Priska. They walked without a destination, which felt deliberate, both of them choosing the absence of destination. "It's real now," she said. "It's public." "Yes." "The children will be asked questions. At school. By people." "I know." He paused. "I'll handle whatever needs to be handled." She glanced at him. "You don't have to manage this alone." "Neither do you," he said. "You have been managing alone for 6 years." She was quiet for a moment. "I was so angry at you," she said, not accusingly, just honestly. "For years, I was so certain you had chosen convenience over what we had, and I was raising your son alone, and I kept—" She stopped. "I kept almost hoping you were miserable. I'm not proud of that." "You're allowed to do that," he said. "It didn't help," she said. "It didn't make anything easier, and it didn't change anything. I was carrying it." "I know something about that," he said. She looked at him. "I didn't date anyone," he said. "After you. I told myself it was because I was busy, because of the business. But the truth is I couldn't feel anything close to what—" He stopped. He started again. "The engagement to Lee Chae-young was practical. It was practical precisely because I was not capable of anything more, and I told myself that was fine." Sonia said nothing. "It was not fine," he said. They walked for a moment in silence. "What do you want?" she said finally, "not from the situation, from me." He looked at her. "The same thing I wanted 5 years ago," he said. "I want to know you again. I want to be known by you. I want—" He paused. "I want you to trust me, not quickly. Not because of what we had before. I understand that trust has to be rebuilt, and I understand I am asking you to do something very difficult. But I am asking." She stopped walking. He stopped with her. She looked at the ground for a moment, then at him. My children need stability, she said. Above everything, whatever happens between you and me, they come first. Yes, he said, immediately. Of course. Elon asked me this morning why you keep coming to the park, she said. I told him you liked it there. What did he say? He said, she pressed her lips together briefly. He said he thought you were coming to see him, and then he went very quiet, the way he does, and then he said, is that okay? The ache in Chae-young's chest was so clean it was almost elegant. What did you tell him? He asked. I told him yes, she said. I told him it was okay. He looked at her. Sonia, he said. Don't, she said. Her voice was very quiet. I'm not ready for whatever you were about to say. I'm close to it, but not yet. Okay, he said. They stood there for a moment in the early evening, the city moving around them. Sunday, she said finally. You mentioned Sunday. You said your grandmother. My grandmother wants to meet the children, he said. And you. He paused. She asked for you specifically. She's terrifying, Sonia said. She is, he agreed. She'll love you. Sonia looked at him. You sound very certain of that, she said. She already knows, he said. She told me. 40 years of reading people, and she always knew. Something moved across Sonia's face. Something complicated and warm and very carefully held. Sunday, she said. A concession, a small opening. Sunday, he said. It was Elon who asked the question. Not on Sunday, before Sunday, on Saturday morning, at the park again, where Chae-young had simply started showing up, and which Elon had started treating as an established fact. They had been sitting on the bench while Alina lectured Chae-young on the inadequacies of the park's landscaping decisions, and then she had gone to investigate the kiosk, and there was a small quiet. Elon had his knees drawn up. He was looking at the path. Are you really my dad? He asked. He did not look up when he asked it. His voice was very small. Chae-young looked at him. The boy was 6 years old and carrying a question that had been too heavy for him, that he had been carrying alone because there was no other option, and he had finally found an angle from which to put it down. Chae-young got off the bench. He knelt on the ground in front of his son. Elon looked up, startled. Yes, Chae-young said. I am your father. Elon stared at him. I didn't know where to find you, Chae-young said. That is the truth. I didn't know you existed. Not because I didn't want you, because someone made it impossible for me to know. But the minute I found out, I came to you, and I am not leaving. Elon's eyes were very bright. You promise? He asked. The same word. The same question. The family had a tradition of it. I promise, Chae-young said. With everything I have. Elon's face crumpled for 1 second, just one, and then he reached forward and grabbed Chae-young's jacket with both fists and pressed his face against his shoulder, and Chae-young, kneeling on the ground in a public park, put his arms around his son and held him. He had held a lot of things in his life. Deals, relationships, years of grief compressed into something functional. But he had never held anything that felt like this, like something slotting into a place that had been hollow for years and quietly suffering the vacancy. He held on. Alina returned from the kiosk 3 minutes later, looked at the scene, and sat down on the bench without comment. She ate her snack. She looked at the sky. After a moment, she said quietly, I told you. Nobody asked her what she meant. They all knew. Sunday dinner at the Kim family home was exactly what it was, a formal event that Kim Hae-jin had converted by sheer force of her personality into something intimate. The house itself was older than the buildings Chae-young had built, full of wood and specific light and the accumulated weight of a family that had been a family for a long time. Sonia stood in the entrance and looked at it the way she looked at everything, taking it in, making a private judgment. Hae-jin greeted her at the door with a long, unblinking look that lasted several seconds and would have unmanned most people. Sonia looked back at her steadily. "Good," Hae-jin said, as if that settled something. She then turned to the children, and something in her ancient face rearranged itself into what, in someone less formidable, might be called softness. "You are Alina," she said. "Yes," Alina said. "And you walked into a room full of adults and asked for help." "Yes." "Good." She looked at Elon, who was holding his mother's hand. "And you?" "Elon," he said, because he had been practicing. "Elon," she studied him. He held her gaze, which was braver than most adults managed. "You have your father's jaw," she said, "and your mother's composure." She nodded once. "Come, you'll tell me about yourself at dinner." Chae-young watched his grandmother take his son's free hand and lead him toward the dining room with complete natural authority, as if she had been doing it for years. Elon went without resistance, which was, Chae-young understood, the highest possible tribute the boy could pay. Kim Hyun-woo was quieter than his son, a reserved, careful man who clearly processed information internally before releasing any of it. He shook Sonia's hand and said, with the specific directness of a man who believes in the economy of apology, "I was not aware of what happened 5 years ago. I am sorry that it happened." "Thank you," Sonia said. "My son was not the same after you left," Hyun-woo said. He said it the way he might state a business fact. "I noticed. I attributed it to work pressure." A pause. "I was incorrect." Sonia glanced at Chae-young. He was looking at the wall. "He is better at admitting things than he looks," she said carefully. A sound that was almost a laugh escaped Hyun-woo. He looked at her. "Yes," he said. "He is." At dinner, Alina sat beside Hae-jin, which appeared to have been Hae-jin's own engineering. Within 20 minutes, they were in deep conversation about a Korean historical drama that Alina had been watching, in which Alina disagreed with the historical accuracy of a subplot and made her case methodically, with the specific patience of someone who has been told before that she is too young to have opinions and has decided to make her opinions too well documented to dismiss. Hae-jin listened to all of it, to every point, every counter-argument that Alina anticipated and addressed before it could be raised, and then said, "You are correct. It was poor research," and looked at Chae-young as if to say, "Do you see what you have?" He saw. Elon, seated on Chae-young's other side, ate steadily and said little, but at one point Chae-young mentioned casually that the moon had been particularly visible the previous night, and Elon's entire posture changed. "I saw it," he said, with the specific urgency of someone who has been waiting to say this. "It was in waxing gibbous. That's almost full, but not yet." "You know the phases," Chae-young said. "I know all of them," Elon said, "in order." "Tell me." And Elon told him. All of them, in order, without hesitation, with the quiet pride of someone sharing something they have held carefully for a long time without anyone to share it with. Hyun-woo, seated across the table, watched his grandson describe the cycle of the moon and pressed his lips together briefly. Sonia, seated beside Chae-young, watched Elon's face. She had seen that face 1,000 times. She had seen him explain things to himself, in his room, with no audience, because there was no one to explain them to. She watched him now with an audience, watched him discover that the things he had been holding alone were wanted, and she felt something she did not yet have a name for, something composed of grief and relief in equal measure, something that would take a long time to fully arrive. Afterward, when the children had fallen asleep in one of the guest rooms, Elon deeply, immediately, the way children sleep when they have been seen and are finally resting, and the adults were sitting with tea, and the house had settled into the kind of quiet that comes after something important. Sonia sat beside Chae-young on the window seat, looking out at the garden. "That went well," she said. "My grandmother hasn't enjoyed dinner that much in years," he said. "She terrified me," Sonia said, "every time she looked at me directly. She does that. And then I realized she was enjoying it, that it was her version of warmth." "Yes," Chae-young said. "It took me until I was 30 to understand that." Sonia looked out at the garden. A small quiet settled between them, not uncomfortable, but full, the way quiet gets when two people have enough between them to fill it. "What happens with the case?" she asked. "Han Min-seok's cooperation is enough to proceed," he said. "Chairman Lee is exposed. Lee Chae-young." He paused. "There are separate proceedings regarding what happened with Elon. The footage from the gala, combined with Alina's statement, is being reviewed." Sonia nodded. Her jaw was tight. "She will not be near them again," he said, quietly, but with complete finality. "I will make certain of that." She looked at him. "I believe you," she said. It was a simple sentence. It should not have carried so much weight, but it did. He looked at her. In the soft light, with the day's armor slightly down, she looked like herself, the version of her he had loved, not separate from who she was now, but continuous with it. The years had added to her, rather than diminished her. "Sonia," he said. She turned to look at him. "I loved you then," he said. "And I love you still. I am not saying that to pressure you into anything. I am saying it because it is true, and because I have spent 5 years not saying things that are true, and I am done with that." He paused. "You can have whatever time you need. You can set whatever pace you need. I'm not going anywhere." She looked at him for a long time. "I never stopped," she said finally, very quietly. Not a declaration, something more private than that. Something she was giving him carefully, with both hands open. "I know," he said. She exhaled, looked at the garden, then, almost imperceptibly, she shifted on the window seat so that she was slightly closer. He did not move toward her. He let her come, because that was how it had always worked between them. She moved toward things in her own time and on her own terms, and he had always understood that her trust was not given but built, and building took time. He had time. He had all the time in the world. 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday afternoon that was unremarkable in every other way, Elon came home from school with a drawing. He had drawn a family. Child's drawing, stick figures, approximate in their anatomy, surrounded by a house and some trees, and what appeared to be the park, identifiable by the coffee kiosk he had rendered in careful detail. He had labeled each figure in crooked letters, Mama, Alina, me, and on the right side of the drawing, slightly taller than the others, with a careful dimple indicated by a small curved line, Dada. He handed it to Chae-young without ceremony, the way children hand over their most important things, with no performance, no explanation, just the object and the trust that you will understand it. Then he went to find his sister, who was already explaining something to Mrs. Han with the air of someone who finds incompetence deeply inconvenient. Chae-young stood in the hallway, holding the drawing. He stood there for long enough that Sonia came around the corner and stopped when she saw his face. "What is it?" she said. He held it out. She took it. She looked at it, at the labeled figures, at the word in Elon's crooked writing on the right side of the paper, at the dimple rendered in a child's understanding of what a dimple is. A curved line, imprecise, Absolutely right. She had told Elon his father's name 3 days before. She had sat with both children and explained as simply and honestly as she could what had happened. Not all of it, not the adult machinery of it, but the truth that mattered to a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old, that their father had never known where they were, that it wasn't anyone's fault who mattered to them, that he was here now. Alina had asked 2 questions, both precise, both logical, and had then gone quiet in the way she went quiet when she was integrating new information. Elon had asked 1 question. Is he staying? Sonia had looked at him. Yes, she had said, he's staying. Elon had nodded once, with the gravity of a boy who has been carrying a question for his entire life and has finally received an answer that fits it. Now Sonia held the drawing in both hands, and her face did something she had not allowed herself to do in front of Chae-young yet, something private and large and composed equally of grief for the years gone and gratitude for the moment standing in front of her. She reached up and pressed her hand against Chae-young's jaw for 1 moment. Just one. The gesture was brief and specific, and carried everything she did not yet have language for. Then she moved past him toward the kitchen. Chae-young had just finished hanging the drawing when his phone rang. Han Mi-cha, his physician. He answered. I need to speak with you, she said. Her voice had that careful quality, the one medical professionals use when they are carrying something that cannot be rushed. About the DNA panel. I have the results, he said. Elon is... I know, she said. That's not why I'm calling. He went still. When I ran the test, I ran a full panel, standard procedure. I always do. A pause that lasted slightly too long. Chae-young, I need you to sit down. He didn't sit down. Tell me, he said. Silence. Then, Alina is also yours. The drawing on the wall. Mama, Alina, me, Dada. He looked at it. The little girl who had walked into a ballroom full of 300 strangers, alone. The little girl who had grabbed his sleeve with both hands and refused to let go. The little girl who had stood in front of her brother every time something threatened him. The little girl who had said, I told you at the park, and sat down like her work was done. His daughter. She had been his daughter the entire time. Chae-young. Han Mi-cha's voice came through the phone. Distant. Are you there? He couldn't answer, because the question that was forming in his mind was not about DNA results or timelines or how this was possible. It was simpler than that. It was the only thing that mattered. Does Sonia know? To be continued. If this destroys you, you already know what to do. Subscribe. Drop a comment. Tell us, did you see it coming? Because Alina knew exactly what she was doing from the moment she walked into that ballroom. She just didn't know why. Comment part 2 in the comments section, and nothing will ever be the same.